Over to you, Damien. Thanks.
Great, 1 second.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We will get started in a couple minutes and get ready for the presentation. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon and good morning to those of us still on the West Coast. My name is Mary Watts, and I'm a senior advisor with the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. We are so thankful that you've all joined us this entire week for World Water Week, and today to wrap it up. Here at OCS, we work to reduce poverty, increase opportunity and economic security of individuals and families, and revitalize communities. Our social service and community development programs work in a variety of ways to improve the lives of many. And as we all know, families and communities cannot thrive without the basic necessities for life, and water is absolutely essential. So today we'll have a discussion about progress made to date and important next steps for moving closer to quality water and wastewater access for all. Just a few housekeeping tips before we get started. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on the OCS World Water Week website once the closed captioning file is complete. However, the PowerPoint slides will be posted on the OCS World Water Week website this afternoon, and we will add the link to the website in the chat box. After today's speakers finish their presentation, we will have a moderated Q&A session. So I encourage you all to use the Q&A box throughout the presentation and add any questions that you might have. While we may not get to every question during the Q&A session, we will review all of the questions and determine if we need to issue any supplementary materials. Therefore, you should use the Q&A box for all questions and then only use the chat box for any general comments or greetings and so forth. Lastly, towards the end of the presentation, I will add a link to the chat box so that you can evaluate today's session. I ask that you please take the time to fill out the 6-question survey so that we can better serve you in the future. Okay, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, I'd like to introduce our incredible speakers and moderators. They'll each spend a few minutes introducing themselves and their home agency. So I'll not go into too depth, but I'm really excited for today's lineup. And we are going to start off today. If we can change the next slide, great. So we have a great lineup today, and you'll hear from all 6 of these experts in the field of water. And we will get started today with Scott Barringer. Scott, if you can go on screen and introduce yourself. Thank you all and enjoy the presentation.
All right, thank you, Mary. Hello, everyone. I am Scott Barringer. I'm Deputy Assistant Administrator with the Water Environmental Programs at the United States Department of Agriculture. It's interesting as we travel across our nation, how many folks don't realize that the USDA is very vital in the water sector and providing financing and technical assistance in this area. Our agency was actually established over 80 years ago in 1935, and we got our first funding and made our first loan in 1940. It was little over $1,000 in the Pacific Northwest, Idaho. Our agency was established to help with the water crisis at the time there, and it grew from there to from $1,000 loan to over billions of dollars each year. And if we could go to the next slide, please. And so, as I said, here at USDA, we do fund water projects. We're not just water, but we do wastewater, solid waste, and storm. Now, our primary, because we're rural in nature being the USDA, our primary focus is on populations of 10,000 or less. That's cities, towns, unincorporated areas of 10,000 and less. Now, with the 2018 Farm Bill, Congress did give us authority to go up to 50,000 in population for our guaranteed loan program. That's the program that we administer with commercial lenders to help those communities that are able to afford commercial lending, but just need our backing on that. And as I said, during FY 2020, we had one of our biggest years without supplemental funding, like in the ARA years. We did over $2 billion worth of funding to help benefit rural communities, and served over 2.1 million rural residents in getting new or improved service at that time. And just so you know, in particular, the type of projects that we can finance at Water Environmental Programs, you know, we unlike some agencies, it requires a violation to be fixed. Now, we do focus our funding on health and sanitary because, of course, that's priority, but we can also do acquisition, construction, and improvements without violations, you know, taking those steps to be proactive. If your system's 50 years old and you know you're having a lot of leaks and all, I mean, without violations, we could still help you. Then the drinking water, you know, we fund projects on the source side, treatment side, storage, and distribution, the whole 9 yards, if you will. On the wastewater, the same. We can do collection, transmission, treatment, and disposal. On solid waste, we do collection, disposal, and closures. And then with stormwater, we can do collection, conveyance, and disposal. And I listed those in kind of the order of how our funding comes in. I mean, you know, our biggest program is our drinking water, followed by wastewater, then stormwater, and I mean solid waste and stormwater. But you know, we can do all four of those type facilities in our financing. We do have an engineering and environmental staff on board that helps review these projects and support these projects, and helps consult engineers in development of projects and what can be funded. And then, you know, the other unique thing about our agency compared to some of the other federal agencies is that we do have a network of field office staff. We have over 47 rural development state offices, and then thousands of hundreds, if not thousands of, well, hundreds of, let me rephrase that, hundreds of field staff in rural America with thousands of employees supporting those. So we actually have a federal presence in all of those, in all 50 states and 3 territories, if you will. And over to the right, you'll see kind of the type of applicants that we have. You know, over 80% of our applicants are public bodies like your city, towns, municipalities, but we also cater to nonprofit organizations, your rural water type nonprofits that develop. 18% of our business goes there. And then we also cater to Native American tribes, and 2% of our business goes there. Now, you know, that's not to say that's only 2% is all that we help Native Americans, because, you know, some public bodies and nonprofits also serve Native Americans. But what that's showing is the recipients, the actual applicants that we see. And if we can go to the next slide. In addition to just the direct program, Congress does set our focus by giving a set aside grant funds for specialty programs. And, I wanted to list those because these are typically unserved, underutilized parts of our program. And so we do get special funding for them. For instance, Colonia grants. So the 4 states that border, Mexico, we do get up to $20-some million every year to help in those areas. We get emergency community water assistance grants. This year we had right at $40 million in case there was an emergency. And I know we have a storm brewing in south here and heading this way, and so we're getting ready in a number of ways to assist in our emergency community water assistance grant program. Is a vital part of helping communities that are hit by drought, hurricanes, and any other type of disaster that's beyond their control that they weren't expecting. Then we also have Native American grant funds. We get about 20 to 25 million for that program. It's a 100% grant program that can help federal recognized Native American tribes. And I know you're going to hear from Dave Harvey a little later, Indian Health Services, and we partner with them on many projects with our Native American tribes. We also have the Rural Alaskan Village Grants Program, and that program helps in those rural villages that are hard to get to, and those folks really need some help too. If you've ever been up there, you'd know what I'm talking about. And they get about 20 million every year that we can help those. Then we have the Rural Economic Area Partnership grants for those areas, mainly in New York and North Dakota and Vermont are mainly the REAP areas these days, but we do get some money to help those. We also get strategic and economic community development loans and grant funds, what we call our SECD, and these are for those areas that decide they're going to partner together to do a regional system, for instance. And then we also get supplemental funding as needed to support disaster. Our last big funding was as a result of the hurricanes in 2017, Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. We actually still have over $100 million available for any of those states that were impacted by one of those storms. Including Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands. But the other part of our program, besides capital infrastructure, is we also have technical assistance programs. We have a pre-development planning grant program, which helps communities develop a preliminary engineering report or an environmental report to help them file an application. And it doesn't have to be necessarily an application with us. That assistance is available for communities, and once they get those reports, they can decide where they want to apply. And they're normally $30,000, so it's pretty good help for a small rural community that needs help. We have our revolving fund program grants. We have our decentralized water system grants. These are advertised once a year for helping individuals. It's for a nonprofit to apply for. And then individual homeowners who need help with water or septic systems, for instance, can apply through those nonprofits to obtain some of that money in the form of low interest loans to help with their water or sewer needs. We have the solid waste management grant program that really helps in the technical figuring out how to improve your solid waste facilities or get help with analyzing those solid waste facilities. And then we have what we call the search grant, special evaluation assistance for rural communities and households. And it's similar to our pre-development planning grant, but it is for smaller communities, 2,500 or less. And it does pretty much the same thing as the pre-development planning grant program. It helps you get the material together, studies or the preliminary engineering report or environmental report needed to file a federal application. Then we have the technical assistance and training grant program, which helps. In fact, we have a TAT grant with a nonprofit that actually works in the colonial areas and helps them develop applications for those communities that needs it. We also have a circuit rider contract program, and that circuit rider program is under our technical assistance programs, and it provides needed help. It can do leak detections, they can help communities or train their board members. And one of the big things is with that storm coming, they've already mobilized and are ready. They have generators ready to help those communities. Many of you may recall the storms, the winter storms a few months ago down in Texas, and we had our circuit riders out there delivering generators to help get those systems operating again. And then my next slide, please. And just to show you some of the impact, I want to be mindful of my other speakers, so I'll go through these pretty quick. But if you have questions, feel free to contact me or put them in the chat. But this is kind of an important performance over the last 9 and 10 years of our impact. Over 2,000 counties were served in all 50 states and 7 territories. Over 17.9 million rural residents received new or improved water and waste disposal service because of our programs. Over 6 million households and businesses benefited by our programs. The average annual household income of population that we served during that time frame was less than $36,000. Because, again, we target the most lowest, smallest communities, and that's further demonstrated by the next bullet points that over 83% of our business during that time frame were to 5,000 or less in population. And then if you skip down to the bottom, you'll see 43% helped 1,000 or less. And that's where our low interest loans and grants come in to help those small populations, because economy of scale. You don't have as many people to be able to pay back those loans, so we have to inject some grant into those projects. We also had 15.7 billion invested. That's our total investment during the 2012-2020 season. So we've done over $1 billion a year, close to $2 billion a year in recent years, and in this past year, obviously over $2 billion. 67% loan, 33% grant, and we also leveraged with these other partners 24% with our other government agencies and federal funders and commercial lenders to bring in additional $3.83 billion to help with projects. We also did $126 million in our guaranteed loan program with private lenders. And then that technical assistance program I was just talking about with the circuit riders and all, we did over $266 million in technical assistance. And we provided, with that, those technical assistance providers provided over 474,000 technical assistance visits. And so in closing, our program, does have grant funding, and we have low interest loan funding. Our interest rate today for our poverty loan is 1.375. Our intermediate rate is 1.75, and our above or market value is at 2.15. And we can make those loans for over 40 years. But anyhow, I want to give April a chance to talk about her program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to April and let her tell you about all the good things that she's involved in.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody see and hear me okay? I'm April Ballou, General Counsel and Vice President of State Regulatory Affairs for the National Association of Water Companies. And I really appreciate the invitation to be here today and to talk about this important topic. Affordability concerns have been a top priority for NAWC and our members for a long time. But as with most of us here today, it is an issue that has really increased in urgency over the past year and a half during the COVID pandemic. On the first slide, I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit about the National Association of Water Companies. We could go to the next slide, thanks. So our members are private water companies that are regulated by state public utility commissions. We operate across the country from California to Connecticut and everywhere in between. NAWC has been in existence for 125 years, and our members have been serving communities for over 200 years. NAWC utilities provide water service to 73 million Americans. We deliver 4.6 billion gallons of water per day and maintain over 100,000 miles of pipe across the country. Next slide, please. NAWC's utilities never lose sight of the importance of water service and how essential it is to daily life. I don't have to tell any of you how important water service is to everyday life. However, NAWC members make it a point to never forget this and to always keep it in mind when we are serving our customers. Unfortunately, providing water service has become increasingly challenging in recent years. Water utilities, as with all utility providers, have to be vigilant in preventing cyber attacks and physical attacks to the system. As evidenced by the Oldsmar, Florida attack, water systems have been the target of these attacks more and more. In many areas of the country, we are seeing, as we are seeing currently in the West, we are facing drought and supply shortages. Aging infrastructure is a huge issue, with most of the pipes in this country reaching the end of their useful life and in need of replacement. The cost of replacing these pipes is significant, and yet it must be undertaken for obvious health and safety reasons. In recent years, we are finding more emerging contaminants such as PFAS and PFOA in our water supply. And while utilities are not the polluters of these chemicals, we are responsible for removing them, which involves costly treatment systems. And lastly, fragmentation in the water industry is a challenge. There are over 52,000 water systems in the United States. This is compared to 3,200 electric distribution systems. So you can see that the water industry is unique in that there are many small community-run water systems across the country. And some of these simply do not have the expertise or the financial capability to proactively address these issues that the water industry is facing. Next slide, please. So you add to this list the pandemic last year, which all of us struggled with, and resulted in a great deal of economic hardship and customers who are struggling to pay their utility bills. NAWC's utilities quickly focused on this issue. Immediately after the pandemic began on March 16, 2020, 100% of NAWC's members voluntarily stopped disconnecting customers for non-payment. However, as the pandemic went on, we realized that the fallout from this was not going to be short-lived, as all of us soon discovered, and that we needed to be proactive in helping customers and defining our role in ensuring that customers have access to safe, reliable, and affordable water. So in the fall of 2020, NAWC formed an affordability working group, and our goal was really to self-evaluate, to catalog what our members are doing on this issue, but also to examine what else we need to be doing, where we could best help, and where we needed to improve. And after meeting a few times, we soon realized that talking about this issue as an affordability issue was a bit too limiting. Talking about affordability simply focuses on the price of water. And I think what all of us at NAWC and probably all of us here want to ensure is that customers have access to water that is not only affordable, but is also safe and reliable. And we have seen countless times across the country when systems have focused solely on providing cheap water, and safety and reliability, the safety and reliability aspects tend to suffer. So at NAWC, we decided that for us, a better term for what we wanted to achieve was water equity, because it encompassed all three aspects of this: safety, reliability, and affordability. So in light of this, NAWC developed 5 principles for water equity, which our board of directors voted on and approved, and really represents our roadmap for achieving this 3-legged stool that makes up water equity. And as you can see on this slide, we've set forth the 5 principles here. And the first principle is really our guiding principle, and it's that water equity means that everyone should have access to safe, reliable, and affordable water. So that's pretty simple. However, of course, the devil is in the details. And how do we achieve that? That is the big question. And that's where we focus on the second principle. You could go to the next slide. The second principle for us for achieving water equity is focusing on the customers. So that is really a top priority for us, looking at our customers and seeing what they need. We operate all across the country, which means that our members experience a variety of challenges depending on the communities where they operate. And we really focus on designing our customer assistance programs to meet the needs of the individual communities where we serve. So you can see on the right-hand side here a list of different customer assistance programs. They can be grants that our members offer, payment plans, monthly credits, budget billing. These customer assistance programs really run the gamut, but I will say that through our affordability group, we discovered that our members really took this opportunity to examine their customer assistance programs, and in many cases, they augmented these programs or created new ones in light of the particular struggles that customers were facing during COVID. And we also realized that even if you have the best customer assistance program, unless customers are aware of it and it's easy to apply for, then they're not often much use. So we really increased our outreach and communication to customers to increase awareness of utility-based customer assistance programs. Our focus was on making eligibility easier and streamlining the application process so that customers were aware of the programs and that it wasn't a burdensome hurdle to apply for the programs. And lastly, we really tried to get the message out to customers that if a particular customer assistance program was not working for you or would not work for you, please reach out to the utility and communicate what issues you were struggling with, and that we were willing to work with you. So COVID presented a really unique situation, and that we really wanted our customers to be aware that our utilities were willing to work with them. So our customer assistance programs were a big focus for NAWC members, and really get at the affordability part of water equity. We also wanted to make sure we didn't lose sight of the other two parts of the three-legged stool of water equity. And that brings me to the next principle on the next slide. And this is never compromise on safe and reliable water. As you can see here on the side, NAWC members have a 0.09 EPA enforcement actions per 1 million customers, while other water systems had 30 EPA enforcement actions for the same number of customers. So we have a really good track record on safety and reliability. And how do we do that? So remember the challenges that I mentioned a little bit earlier. NAWC members make it a priority to address these challenges head on. And we do this by creating long-term infrastructure replacement plans to ensure a continuing commitment to get at aging infrastructure. We develop security plans and engage in black sky planning to guard against cyber and physical attacks. We undertake infrastructure hardening to prepare for extreme weather events. We invest in experienced employees who are able to meet complex and frequently changing environmental and safe drinking water standards. So the question might be, how does this all relate to affordability? So customer assistance programs, which I talked about on my last slide, are absolutely essential to addressing affordability issues. And utilities play a huge role in providing those assistance programs and raising awareness about them. But helping customers when they're already in trouble tends to be reactionary. And at NAWC, we believe we need to focus on preventative measures that keep rates consistent and affordable. And so by addressing the challenges that I talked about that all water utilities face in proactive ways can lead to rate stability and gradual rate increases when necessary and help avoid rate shock. And this leads into my next slide, which is the fourth principle for water equity. And that is invest in communities by investing in infrastructure. I mentioned earlier that a lot of the water and wastewater infrastructure in the country is in bad condition and in need of replacement. This is a well-known issue and one that will take a long time to address. But incremental and consistent investment in infrastructure allows the cost to be incurred gradually, which prevents rate shock. And the 10 largest NAWC companies have invested nearly $3.7 billion in their water systems in 2019. This is more than the total federal investment in the water infrastructure through the state revolving funds in 2019. So this is a significant amount. And these investments make a big difference in keeping rates stable and ensuring high quality drinking water. So while it's easy when talking about affordability issues to just focus on assistance programs, I think it's important to remember that there are less obvious ways to help customers and keep rates low. And that involves ensuring that water systems are well run and are making consistent investments in the system. On the next slide, you'll see the last principle for water equity, which is developing partnerships and encouraging water system consolidation. I talked about water system fragmentation earlier in my presentation. And while NAWC members are proactively trying to help customers through customer assistance programs and ensuring their systems are well run, there are unfortunately many water systems across the country that are not taking these proactive measures. Many small systems are struggling financially, and without economies of scale, many small systems are unable to invest in the infrastructure, deploy new technology, address affordability issues, or treat emerging contaminants. By partnering with a larger, more experienced utility, this is a proven way for smaller struggling systems to obtain the resources necessary to maintain a healthy system. So how to encourage system consolidation, I think, needs to be a part of the water equity conversation. And the other part of this last principle is developing partnerships. NAWC's goal of developing partnerships to address water equity is one of the reasons we're here today. We are excited to work with OCS and state departments of human services, state public utility commissions, and others with the goal of helping customers. We are actively involved in advocating for the LIWA program, which we are very happy to see implemented. And as the program rolls out, our members have been involved in reviewing state plans, entering into vendor agreements, and educating customers about this program. In the meantime, NAWC continues to advocate for a permanent federal water assistance program that is funded at the same level as LIHEAP, because water assistance is just as important as gas and electric assistance. And the EPA pilot program and the Senate infrastructure bill is promising, and we're hopeful that it passes. I will conclude by saying that NAWC and its utilities are committed to achieving water equity. And we do not just provide water to communities, we are those communities. Our members work and live in the communities we serve. And our goal is to ensure everyone has access to safe, reliable, and affordable water. And I look forward to working with all of you to achieve that goal. And I will now pass it over to Captain Harvey for our next presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks, April. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm David Harvey. I'm the Deputy Director of the Division of Sanitation Facilities Construction at the Indian Health Service. And I'm real happy that to be here today to explain to you about the program and how it works to assist Native Americans and Alaskan Natives to improve water access. Next slide. So first, just start off with the Indian Health Service. The mission of the Indian Health Service is to raise the physical, mental, social, and spiritual health of Native Americans to the highest level possible. And the vision is healthy communities and quality healthcare systems through strong partnerships and culturally responsive practices. So you see there's a kind of a pyramid there, and at the base of that pyramid is healthy is water and sanitation that supports the public health and the medical care. So the Indian Health Service is primarily known as a kind of a healthcare delivery system for Native Americans, but included in there is an environmental health component, of which the work that I'm involved with is undertaken. Next slide. So the program's been around since 1959. It was realized that the high rates of illness, GI and illness in Native American lands were a challenge, and it was kind of directly attributed to water. And that's how the program got kicked off. In general, these are the tasks that are listed here on this slide are what the program focuses on. Annually, we work to develop a sanitation deficiency list that's reported to Congress that kind of identifies sanitation deficiencies in water, sewer, and solid waste, and ranks them. That's report is submitted to Congress annually. It's then used to justify the appropriation levels of the program and to allocate resources to the area offices. We provide professional engineering and design construction services. So we're kind of like an on-call engineering consultant. You'll see kind of our organizational structure, but many of our engineers live in the communities in which are being served by the facilities that they build. Again, we provide the funding to support water and the waste facilities, the development. We lead kind of collaboration with other agencies in the development of multi-funding partner projects. You heard Scott, USDA is a good partner with us, as well as EPA and the Bureau of Reclamation, to kind of leveraging federal resources to solve similar problems. And so our engineers are involved in kind of working with the tribes to kind of put the puzzle together of that infrastructure, the funding piece. We do provide technical consultation and training to improve the operation and maintenance of the tribally owned water and wastewater systems. So the way the program is currently run now is that the Indian Health Service builds and constructs the facilities, and they are handed to the tribes for operation and maintenance. with the technical assistance that we can provide. We have in Albuquerque, New Mexico, we have it's called the Environmental Health Support Center that provides a number of trainings associated with that. I think in 2019, before COVID, we had about 37 training courses that were offered, and in 2021, we have planned around 28 training courses for around 600 hours of training. In that, we partner also with ITCA, Brian Bennon's group, as well as others to help to deliver that training. And we also advocate, as you see on slide 6 here, advocate during the development policies and regulations for tribes. It's kind of an interesting role as a government official. So we do some advocacy, internally to that when those things are, when bills and laws are being developed. And finally, we assist tribes with sanitation facilities, emergencies, emergency outages, water delivery. The most recent one was the Navajo Nation, where we've assisted in kind of setting up transitional water points, and I'll look at that. We'll look at that here in a little bit. Okay, next slide. So these are examples of the types of the infrastructure that are designed and built by the program to support Native American communities. You see here it runs water, sewer, solid waste, and there's again some planning services as well, not necessarily infrastructure, planning services. So and really that planning should be at the top, because we want the planning, the projects to be well planned and ready to fund with preliminary engineering reports and well scoped with budgets that are understood, so that when the IHS and the other federal partners put resources on them, they can be built for that cost and within the timeframes that are within the timeframes that are reasonable. You see there we have a gamut of things from like private wells, individual wells, cisterns, which are on hauled water systems, basically a container that's used to kind of receive water from a hauled point, and then be sometimes pressurized through solar powered panels or electric pumps or gravity for use in the home. We have point of use treatment, transmission, storage, community water treatment, washaterias, which are kind of primarily used in Alaska, which are community buildings which have showers and clothes laundering facilities and points to collect collect treated drinking water for hauling back to your house, and then your typical tanks and distribution. So sewage treatment, we heard a little bit about that from the researchers from Arizona State University yesterday. We do a lot of designs with on-site septic tanks. We're a partner with EPA's on-site septic tank program. I think we might probably put the most in the federal government, I would say. And also community systems. The community systems we put in we tend to try to focus on designs that are low cost for operation, so that don't have a lot of moving parts. So total retention of lagoons that can treat waste without much energy, maybe none if the topography of the land work correctly to flow the water to the place, is what we do. And they do not discharge. So that's one of the questions that came up yesterday about discharging versus non-discharging. So they wouldn't be EPA regulated. And also we do solid waste as well, where we work with tribes to develop either landfills. That hasn't been too typical. Usually what it's mostly is our transfer stations, and also there are a number of locations where there's open dumps that are a challenge, and especially although they're not called open dumps, Alaska has a challenge associated with a lot of the waste that's collected there and burned. So we're working with those communities through to help to improve those environmental conditions. All right, next slide. So this is kind of a map. There's 12 of the nation is kind of color coded. There are 12 IHS areas in which the program is delivered. You kind of see them represented differently, and there's also some kind of, you can see the Indian lands dispersed within the map as well. There's about 583 tribes that the program works with. we do have an inventory of homes, of tribal homes, of around 4,000, 400,000 homes that we have provided, that we have in the data system, and of those, about 112,000 of them have some sort of deficiencies associated with either the individual system or the community system that needs and some support of some type. The program is delivered through around 265 engineers. Primarily, they're registered engineers. They have professional licenses. The majority of them do, in order for advancement within the public health service, and also within the Indian Health Service. It's important to have a professional engineering license. We have also a number of technicians, supervisors. A new program that we're taking on is GIS. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second, to map much of this, the infrastructure in the homes. So the deficiencies, based upon our report that was published in December of 2020, is around $3.1 billion worth of need. Again, we're in the review cycle now, and another snapshot of the data will be available in November, December timeframe of this year, for which we'll allocate the resources from the appropriation from 2022, and we'll see if anything comes out of the infrastructure bill as well. This year, the amount of funding has gone up as a result of the American Rescue Plan, so we have about 197 million. Typically, we've been receiving around $190 million per year. So now we've not nearly doubled it as with the American Rescue Plan dollars, but close. That's where we are with that. Next slide. So this is just kind of a review of the structure a little bit more. There's the lead program office is in Rockville, Maryland. That's where I'm in, and then there's 12 area offices located in those primarily kind of more metropolitan areas, and then there's 23 district offices, and then 39 field offices where the majority of the engineers work and perform the roles of the program. All right, next, I think that's it. Probably say, yeah. So if we can maybe just quickly slide over to the a website that I'd like to point you out to. So I mentioned we did do some emergency response work. So under the COVID initiative, under COVID, it became pretty clear that on the Navajo Reservation, has the most number of homes without piped water. We estimated around 37,000 people, so around 9,600 homes at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic did not have access to piped water in their house. And as a result of that, it could have been contributing to the high incidence of COVID infections there. So what we did is we worked with we were requested by the Navajo Nation president, the CDC and the IHS to come in and support that. And we installed 59 transitional water points. That's an example of the picture there, where residents without piped water could gain access to subsidized water. So the CARES Act funds were able to kind of buy down the water cost there. Now, we also provided a means for hauling water safely. So the blue container there that would allow a smaller quantity of water for drinking and cooking to be stored safely. And we provided some chlorine tablets to kind of ensure a chlorine residual in the containers during the hauling and the storage of that water. We created this website here, so let's scroll through it now a little bit. That was available to the public. It had messages from the Navajo Nation president in both English and Navajo. It also had translations. You'll see written the Navajo translations of the text on the website. And we had an alert system to allow users to sign up for alerts when the status of the water in their chapter changed. One of the most interesting pieces of this was is this map that was, let's go down to here now, is a map that showed the status of the type of water points that were put in. There's different types. I can't exactly remember the code, but the blue I think represented the transitional water points, the ones that were shown in the picture, and then the other is a water point that was existing. So what we had here is each chapter had the operating hours of that water point, when they could go there, if there was kind of like, if they wanted to have an email to be sent somewhere to the chapter to ask a question, it could be there. There were photos of the water points there, so people who would know kind of what to look for when they went there if they weren't familiar with that. And so this has been a primary way to kind of communicate that the hatching represented whether or not the containers that have been distributed are available in the particular chapter, the local jurisdiction, kind of like a county. And we're still continuing to support the tribe in the operation of this website. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll just see the partnerships that were developed through this. And gotta keep going. Yeah. There is a number of public health universities, nonprofits, federal agencies, and Navajo Nation government entities that worked on this project to actually recommend the approach. You see it there. The Division of Community Development was the Navajo Nation government, the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, the Navajo Engineering Construction Authority, the community health representatives, as well as the representatives from universities. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see there from Arizona State University, New Mexico State, Billings, Johns Hopkins University, Dig Deep, a vast group of people that helped to kind of guide it and are still helping to kind of support the promotion and the uptake, to increase uptake of the use. So this is kind of an example of the kind of a fully directed kind of emergency response approach that's really still ongoing. And hopefully we will also be able to learn from this, or we have learned many lessons from this, but learn more from this that will help the IHS to implement the program better down the road with regard to serving these most difficult of locations across the reservation. So that's all we got for now. Thanks. We're going to move it on for Christina right now. She's going to be next.
Great, thank you so much, Captain Harvey. Good morning and good afternoon to those in the West Coast. My name is Christina Clark, and I'm the Policy and Operations Branch Chief for the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, which is commonly referred to as LIWA. LIWA is administered by the Office of Community Services within the Administration for Children and Families under the Department of Health and Human Services. And on behalf of the Office of Community Services, I want to thank everyone who's joined us throughout the week to discuss challenges related to water equity and to spotlight the need for support and advocacy related to water and wastewater services. Throughout the week, there's been some discussion about LIWA, but today I'm going to give you a brief overview of the program, which may be a recap for some of you. And after the overview, I will focus on what we hope to achieve through LIWA, including the program outcomes and impacts. Before I jump into my presentation, I want to provide some context for the program. LIWA will be offered, will provide direct funding to almost all of the states and 5 territories, Washington, D.C., and also over 100 Native American tribes or tribal organizations. When awards were initially made, grantees were given access to the administrative portion of their funding to support the development of their programs. Grantees will be able to access the remaining portions of their award upon receipt and approval of their grantee implementation plan. The first batch of plans were due 2.5 weeks ago, unless the grantee requested an extension. And so we are working to turn plans around quickly, and I'm happy to say that we've started providing feedback on grantee plans within about a week of the initial submission deadline, and we've already started approving some of those plans. The goal is for the first round of grantees, which is approximately 120 grantees, to be able to initiate LIWA benefit payments as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. LIWA was first authorized as an emergency program under the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, and an additional authorization was included in the American Rescue Plan, bringing the total for LIWA up to just over $1.1 billion. The legislation included some key guidance related to implementation. It identified that funds should be awarded to states, territories, and Native American tribes and tribal organizations. It also clearly identified that benefits are to be paid on behalf of low-income households to reduce arrearages and rates paid for water and wastewater services. The instructions included payment methods and identified that payment should be made directly to water utility providers on behalf of low-income households. And lastly, the guidance instructed the use of existing policies and procedures to implement the program. And as a result of that, OCS modeled many of LIWAP's policies after the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. And this allowed both OCS and LIWAP grantees to lean on existing structures and mechanisms already in place in order to expedite benefit payments on behalf of low-income households. Next slide. Given the deep inequities in accessing quality, affordable water and wastewater services for low-income households and communities of color, and the devastating impact of health and well-being when these services are not available, we know that there's a great need for the benefits being offered through LIWA. In an effort to ensure LIWA funds are being used where they're most needed, OCS developed 3 program priorities, which are listed in order on the screen. The first priority is to restore service for households that have been disconnected and therefore do not have running water in their homes. Reaching this population of low-income households is so important because a lack of running water cuts off access to clean water for cooking, cleaning, and washing. And this creates an emergency situation where the health and safety of the entire household is at risk. So we really want to provide benefit payments to these households as a first priority, and we want to ensure that the benefit payment is enough to restore services for these households. The second priority includes households that are at risk for disconnection due to an accumulated amount of arrearages on their water or wastewater bill. And for this group, we want to ensure the arrearage payment is enough to remove any pending threat of disconnection. And so in many cases, this means the payment of the entire amount of arrearages, including any associated fees. And then the third priority group includes households that are seeking assistance with current bills. And so these households may be struggling to maintain their water bills and need assistance to reduce the rate charged for their water or wastewater services. Next slide, please. When it comes to immediate outcomes for LIWA, we expect to report achievements related to the number of households that have maintained continuity of water service. And as utility moratorium expire, and as people continue to struggle with the financial hardships, which have been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, LIWA benefits will prevent individuals and households from being disconnected from water access, which is a basic need. LIWA will provide immediate relief for low-income households and families that are facing rising utility costs and are unable to make their resources stretch far enough to cover those costs, as well as other basic needs. And so we're talking about elderly individuals who might have to choose between medication and a utility bill, or families that can't even consider buying school supplies because they're struggling to maintain the running water in their homes. And so we know that water access is essential for hand washing and cleaning. And with that, every time water services are restored or preserved, LIWA will continue to protect people's health and safety. In addition to the outcomes related to benefit payments, LIWA will provide a framework for greater collaboration and enhanced relationships between state and tribal governments and water utility providers. And on the next slide, I'll go into further detail about how to boost the benefits of LIWA through these partnerships and through leveraging resources. Lastly, I want to highlight that data will be collected by LIWA grantees for each benefit payment made. And so for each benefit payment, LIWA grantees will collect information related to the household water burden. And that's the percentage of household income that's spent on water or wastewater services within a specific time frame. Grantees will also collect the amount of assistance needed to reconnect services for households that are disconnected, to remove the threat of disconnection for households facing disconnection, and the amount of assistance provided for households that need help with paying current bills. And so this data can be used to inform continuous quality improvements related to water affordability. Next slide, please. During the startup phase, the Office of Community Services reached out to federal partners, including EPA and IHS, and a number of water stakeholders and advocacy groups, as well as OCS grantees who we knew were implementing water assistance programs. And we did this to help build an understanding of needs related to water and wastewater. And so we encourage grantees to take the same approach in building partnerships and really leveraging resources to increase the reach of this emergency program. We want to encourage grantees to think about what an integrated utility support program would look like, and then how to build partnerships that work towards achieving this vision. And so when we talk about partnerships, this includes partnering with water utility vendors. We want to bring water vendors into the realm of social services, and that's one of the key components of this program. When it comes to water equity, water vendors are positioned to make a huge impact in ensuring equitable access to services. And so as we build awareness of water needs and the programs that address those needs, it's crucial to the success of these programs that we consider and invite everyone to the table that plays a part in providing access to this basic need. Another important opportunity for LIWAP administrators to consider is how to blend and braid LIWAP funding with other programs. And so I hope you were all able